Hey guys, welcome back to more entitled Karen Neighbor Stories. Imagine living in a drought zone, carefully conserving water, only to discover your smug neighbor's pool is draining your bill. This Karen sneaks over, steals your water and says it is for her kids. So then I decided to teach her a very expensive lesson. The first one is titled, Smug Neighbor Karen Keeps Stealing Water from Me to Fill Her Massive Pool. I live in a very hot area and water during the summer is under constant monitoring and conservation. I understand it because the last thing anybody decent would want is there to be a massive drought and fire starting and all of that. I say no decent person for a reason, and I will jump back to that in a moment. Water here can also result in a pretty high bill, so like most people I do my best to lower my usage so I can keep the bill as low as possible. I don't really take long showers or let the sink water run for a long time. Where I am most careful with my water usage is when it comes to my lawn and garden. I don't have a lot of land, so luckily my land doesn't need that much water to begin with. I used to have in-ground sprinkler systems, but it seemed to use too much, so I swapped to just manually water it with a sprinkler and control how long I'm doing it. I also have an area that's a flower garden which gets watered manually as well, mainly because I don't want the flowers to get damaged or get too much water. I was confused a few months back when I got my water bill and it was like 3 times the amount that it used to be. I did not see myself doing anything different that would cause this kind of spike. The rate did not change either, so it was just my usage amount that was going up and I didn't know why. I decided to try and be extra careful and doing everything I could to use as little water as possible, making sure no toilets were having water issues or pipes being broken. I couldn't find anything, and when another bill came, I found out once again that I was being charged that same huge amount. It was time for me to do some detective work, and while I'm no Sherlock Holmes, I did find something interesting. I noticed that the outdoor spigot I attached my hose and sprinklers to was wet around it. A bit on the ground and more near it despite not using it for several days. It was burning hot outside, so it would have to have been used recently, as in that same day when I was not around. I decided to try and see if it would be that way again the next day and waited. When I left for work, I looked and saw that it was totally dry, so my idea of maybe a leak was not the right idea. When I came home, I went right to it and saw it was wet again. This time even more, and I found little patches of water every few feet on my grass. Not a lot, but enough that I could keep an eye and follow it until I got to the edge of my property. Now I need to talk about my neighbor Karen. She lives next door and is always annoying when I run into her. She likes to gloat and ask things like what year my car is, just so she can brag that hers is newer or more expensive. I try to avoid her when possible. Karen had a recent addition to her home that confused not just me, but a lot of other people. She put a pool in her backyard, and not a small one. This thing took up most of the backyard. I understand it being hot and wanting to cool down and having kids that want to swim. With the cost of water currently though, it was just kind of amazing that anybody would want to think to get a pool right now. I'd been wondering about it and the fact that my water patches seemed to go past my property and into hers. I didn't want to just bust in and start making accusations. Instead, I tried to speak to her like a reasonable adult. My first mistake, because Karens cannot be reasoned with. I didn't beat around the bush and mentioned the water patches and just asked her directly if she had been using my water spigot. Unlike some other Karens that would get offended at the mere suggestion, she didn't seem bothered at all. She told me that she was taking it in such a nonchalant way that it took me totally off guard. And well guys, you gotta appreciate an entitled Karen that is at least honest. Anyway, I explained to her that her using it nearly tripled my water bill, and she just looked at me with a smug attitude before going on a mini rant. She was talking about how she thought I was a good neighbor and wouldn't want to ruin relations and cause problems over basically nothing, ignoring me trying to tell her that the bill was not just nothing. She said she was only using a few gallons and it shouldn't matter if I was the good neighbor that I was making myself out to be. I told her once again that I was not trying to be a good bad neighbor, but instead just had a lot of concerns regarding the water bill being so high, offering to show her the difference I was paying before she got her pool installed. She didn't want to see the bill and instead started using her own children as some kind of weird or crazy leverage. She told me that her kids needed a way to cool off and loved the pool more than anything since they got it, telling me one of them had asthma and the pool was the only thing to help them not have an attack. And yeah guys, I had asthma in the past and I wish the doctor prescribed that I should have a pool or something. That sounds awesome. Anyway, I don't know the validity of that, so maybe if somebody knows if that's a real thing, they can tell me, but she told me that her children's happiness and well-being should be more important to me than a few dollars. Well, first of all, it is not on me to make sure your kids are happy. I'm not their parent, so I have no responsibility towards them. I would never yell at a random kid or anything, but I'm not gonna spend a ton of money on kids that are not mine. If they need a pool, then she should be the one paying to fill it up. Second of all, it was far from a few dollars. She had cost me money in the hundreds at this point because of what she was doing. At first I didn't get it, because once a pool is filled, it shouldn't need constant filling up. I figured out that she was doing it little by little until it was filled, and then just topping it off as needed because the heat was evaporating it. Not even to begin getting into the fact that to do this, it meant she constantly trespassed on my property several times to connect the hose and make sure to disconnect it before I got back. Well, I wanted to give her one more chance. Not because I'm a saint, but because I knew that it would just be simpler. And no offense to OP, that is not being called a saint, but instead being stupid. You should never give Karens this much leeway. If you agree with this, please don't forget to like the video, because that would help me tremendously. So anyway, I showed her the water bills since they went up and demanded her to pay me for it and stop accessing my property to steal water. Honestly, if she kept stealing, I was worried the city would fine me for excessive water usage. She didn't care and told me again I should just be a good neighbor and slammed her door in my face. It got worse because she started telling other people that I was trying to knock down her door over a few dollars and that I was being very stingy. Because, of course, she is not a true Karen unless she either wants to make me look bad or try to get me arrested. I decided to put up cameras because what I had so far was not enough proof to really do anything. Water spots and a big bill were only speculation. I needed to be able to prove that she was doing something wrong in order to get back at her for this. I did call the water company and asked about the legality of a theoretical situation like I was facing. They told me that it would be considered utility theft, which was a pretty serious offense. It was apparently a big thing a decade ago in my county, and they put harsh punishments on it to try and get the incidents down. The last thing I looked into while waiting for Karen to strike was the legality of her swimming pool. That got a little bit tricky because having the pool itself didn't require anything special, and it wasn't against any rules. What did require a permit was one from the water company to be allowed to fill the pool due to the amount of water usage. A permit she did not get since she was using my water to cheat it, not to mention that it was summer and her pool was going way over the usage limit restrictions that we had. A reason why I was scared about getting a serious fine because of this bill. She did go over the fence and steal again, this time all captured on beautiful HD video. I used the video and filed the report against her, with my bills to show that the usage went up once she got the pool, and if they looked at her usage it wouldn't fit with the pool being filled. But my price difference would make perfect sense. The city was quick to jump on Karen and agreed that it was clear she was stealing my utilities and violating at least half a dozen legal codes regarding her pool and water usage. It was easy after that to get a judge to force her to pay me back for the water that she had stolen. Plus, needing to pay fines and penalties for all the water usage, I think that a person like Karen does not believe that the rules should apply to her. That because everybody else conserved it, it meant she could go crazy and splurge. I was worried about future issues, so I managed to get a lock for my spigot. That is annoying, but it will stop her from pulling another stunt. Since then, her pool has been empty for the rest of the summer, and it looks like she spent a ton of money on something that she couldn't really use. Maybe the kids can learn to skateboard or something, because it could be cool for that maybe. I won't tell her that though, since Karen is no longer speaking to me and still trying to convince people that I'm a horrible neighbor and that just wanted to stop her kids from having fun. And the next one is another amazing Karen story. And this one is absolutely outrageous. It is titled, "If That's What You Really Want, Karen." So once upon a time I was working a seasonal retail job at a craft store chain. It's important to note that for the purposes of their sales, lighted tree toppers, lighted decorations, string lights, etc. were all separate categories. On this fateful day though, lighted tree toppers were on sale for 30% off. The rest of the lighted decor on that aisle was not. The sales were very clearly marked and the section designated clearly, as well as the category printed on the package itself. It is even listed in the email that Karen was using to present her coupon. Karen approaches my register with her tree topper. The register recognizes the discounts and applies them automatically in most cases, this being no exception. The 30% applies itself. Your total will be $18.90. Karen then presents her 20% off coupon. I'm sorry ma'am, this coupon is not applicable to sale items. Those are not on sale. The lights are not on sale this week. I show the copy of our sale bulletin on my counter. I apologize for the confusion, ma'am. This actually falls under the tree topper category. You will see here, it is 30% off. I won't be able to apply the coupon, but you'll be getting the already discounted price. I'm telling you, I don't want any sale. You're going to take my coupon. I should probably mention that she was in at least once weekly, yelled about sales and coupons every single time, and then declared she was never coming back. Only to be back the following week to do the same. Ma'am, I would have to manually overwrite the sales price and apply the coupon manually as well. Then do it. I'm telling you it's not on sale and I'm using my coupon or I'm reporting you. Well, yes ma'am, if you insist. I got visual confirmation from my supervisor in the way of a hand signal we used to mean go ahead. She was not too happy when I did exactly as she demanded and her total came to $21.60. You're stealing from me. I demand to speak to a manager. I'm never coming back here again. My shift supervisor had been on the next register over the whole time to combat the afternoon rush. That is how she managed to give the visual approval in the moment. She took great joy herself in telling Karen, you have the exact discounted price you demanded. You can pay it or leave. Oh, you're never coming back? Do you promise? Karen paid her $21.60 with her head hung. She was back next week though. And the next one is a fantastic story from r/traumatized them back. And by the way, please let me know in the comments if you still enjoy the entitled people stories. Your feedback is very much appreciated. This traumatized them back story is titled No Proof? Oh, bless your heart, boss. So I have a genetic condition that gives me a variety of weird disorders, including a severe walnut allergy and cancer during my late teens. Since I'm in my 20s, many people assume that I'm not as disabled as I actually am, but 90% of the time I just shrug it off. I've experienced a lot of subtle disability discrimination at work, but I've never been at a company where they are comfortable flat out saying, we don't hire disabled people. Like personally, I understand the logic of accidentally discriminating against me because you're worried your company could give me an allergic reaction, but every disabled person is unqualified? Which eventually led me to this conversation. Head of Human Resources and owner of major company. I understand you had a misunderstanding with your manager yesterday. I wanted to apologize. Any mix-ups? Me, no misunderstanding. Manager denied me a reasonable accommodation because you don't do them and said your company doesn't hire anyone with a gap in their resume due to disability or illness. Personally, I don't see how chemotherapy I had years ago affects my qualifications for working as a store cashier. The owner then said, those are serious accusations which we will certainly look into. Unfortunately, none of our employee calls are recorded, so there's nothing I can really do about a he said she said situation. Me cutting him off? Oh, it's not. You're welcome to treat it as a he said she said situation if that's your decision. However, I do have the conversation captured for my own records. Owner, oh, I'm sorry, let me understand. You recorded our conversations with our employees? Me, state is a single-party consent state. I wish I could have seen his face when I clicked play on my computer and he heard my manager say that company was gonna throw out my resume only because I needed chemotherapy a while ago, since the owner was particular. The silence on the owner's end when he realized that his crappy policies were caught on a hot mic was priceless. I would add more details to show just how bad the situation got before and after reaching out to HR, but to be honest, the EEOC is about to traumatize them harder than I ever could. Edit, damn, I wasn't expecting this to blow up as much as it did. I wish this wasn't common, but the comments are really driving me to follow through with this. I can't promise to give all the details, but I will update, even if it is to say, you should have seen his face at mediation. LMFAO. Were you hired or not? Well, I was hired after my interview and thought there wasn't an issue besides a terrible joke he made, until I followed up with the manager asking for a simple no-cost accommodation, and he said that they don't do accommodations. He then added that I should be excited that I was hired because they usually toss out all resumes with a gap even when it is due to disability or illness. I asked him why he hired me then, and he said he personally felt that I got a bum hand getting cancer in high school, otherwise I would have been tossed too. The dude really thought I would be patting him on the back because I was the exception. Why were you recording? Well, I record all conversations with management the moment they say something legally messed up to cover my own ass. I started recording this manager after he made a effed up joke about my walnut allergy during the interview. You can probably guess the gist, cause I'm not getting my own post flagged over what he said. Only a kid could write this fake post. Well, I wish this was fake. Honestly, I'd rather live in a society where this is beyond the scope of normal and I could work without a-holes making my life harder, but instead I had to explain to my manager like he's 5 how they are breaking the law as blatantly as possible, and then he only doubled down from there. I'd say play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I just thought it was hilarious that I was making a post about disability and Reddit auto-generated able in the username. I cannot wait to update you all on how they are crapping bricks. I don't care about settlements etc. because I don't expect much. After the BS and corporate gaslighting I went through, I just want to watch these two dudes squirm while trying to explain recordings like, I talked with another hiring manager about your chemotherapy and cancer history and we don't do accommodations. Even if it is reasonable, it is not a business need, then it's not a business need. Well, that's my goal, and everything else is a cherry on top. Unfortunately, there have been no further updates to the story, but I would say the story is already satisfying enough. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. So this story happened in South Africa. I feel like many of the HOA horror stories on here take place in America, so I decided to remind all of you that Karens do not have borders and can appear in any country to cause HOA chaos. When I moved to my current neighborhood, there was no HOA and nobody seemed to have a problem with that fact. Sure, once in a while, a neighbor would be a little loud late at night, but we did the adult thing and just talked to people about our issues directly. One time my neighbor had a tendency to like to mow their lawn on Saturday very early. I explained to him that I get home from work at 11 PM on Friday and asked if he could maybe mow his lawn at a different time. He did, and the problem was solved with no third-party involvement. There was also nobody really doing anything illegal around, but I imagine if they did, we would call the police and they would take care of it like a normal neighborhood. We were functioning perfectly fine until Karen and some other people moved in. Now, I wouldn't say Karen had friends exactly. These people ended up being on the eventual HOA board with her, but I wouldn't say that they were her friends. It was like Karen was some villain from a bad 80s movie and the other HOA board members were like her minions. Not once could you speak to one of them about something because they would just tell you to talk to Karen. They did not think for themselves and it was kind of scary now that I think about it, but I need to back up because I got a little carried away. So Karen moved in and decided that the neighborhood needed an HOA. She seemed shocked that one was not in place and talked about how all South African neighborhoods have them and we were living in the Stone Age unless we had one too. I didn't know too much about how she got it off the ground, I just remember 2 different times being spoken to by Karen and her minions. The first was talking about making an HOA and if I wanted to sign for my support basically. I declined that offer despite the clearly scripted speech she was giving me. Talking about why HOAs are good and that they build a strong community and keep things in order. I feel like if I went right now to Google and typed what is an HOA for, I would probably get the exact speech that she gave to me and everybody else. The second was after the HOA was approved and asking me to sign a contract to join it. I could not be forced into it because I was already living here, I didn't want to join and it honestly was not an issue against HOAs as a whole. I feel like here in South Africa we have less horrible ones than in some other countries that seem to dominate these pages. I just knew what kind of person Karen was from our short interactions already and that I didn't want to belong to anything where she was going to be in control. It was a recipe for disaster. If you're like me, you would have been very curious how she got enough support because I was far from the only person not into the whole HOA idea. Of course, she did things a sneaky way, especially with the older members of the neighborhood. I would not be shocked if they didn't know what they were signing or did not know enough about HOAs to be worried about potential fines and the control Karen would actually hold over them. Without that, the HOA idea would have probably been dead in the water since we were doing perfectly fine without one. We had a strong bond as a community already and there were no issues to solve or things we needed. Karen clearly did not like that some people were not jumping on board, and having only some control was not going to be enough for that woman. She needed full control or her head would explode or something. She was clearly a narcissist feeding on the HOA power and the fact that she had minions listening to her every word. Instead of common tactics to try and convince me to join, she had another idea the next time we spoke. Karen, I hear that you have no plans to join the HOA. Me, nope. I'm perfectly happy not being a part of it. Karen, listen, you have two choices. The easier of them would be to sign the contract and just join the HOA. We want to do good here and everybody should want to be a team player. Me, it's not about being a team player, it's me not wanting to spend money on something I don't need to follow rules that I've no say in. Then you need to sell the HOA your house and leave. She further said, let a nice family move in that will be part of the HOA and get with the program. Me, if you think you're going to make me leave, then you have a long wait ahead of you. And considering the wrinkles on your face, I expect to be around here a lot longer than you. Karen, how dare you insult me? I promise that if you don't join or sell your property, then you will not like what happens next. Me, the only thing happening next is you getting away from my door. I could not believe the nerve of her to threaten me because I didn't want to join the HOA. I talked to some friends and they had gotten the same kind of speech from Karen too. She was making the rounds and trying to scare people. Turns out that Karen was a little more serious than I thought and she hired people to harass me. They would call my phone and leave messages about joining the HOA, post things on my front door, etc. They also ruined my yard with a note that said it would not happen if I had the HOA to protect me. I would not budge, so they went one step further. The HOA was also sending me official notices. They were giving me fines claiming that even if I don't join the HOA, my house is still a part of it and subject to fines. Also sending more threats like Karen had said to me in person that day. I was not caving in and letting Karen get her way just because she really wanted it. So that was when she took it a step too far with the people she had hired. I had ordered some food, so when the doorbell rang, I assumed that it was that. Instead though, it was the guys who had been harassing me and they forced their way into my home. They started tearing up the place and actually assaulted me. It was not like I was dying, but it was enough to scare the crap out of me and want to get checked out at the hospital. What Karen did not know is that I had cameras in my house, so I was able to check on my cats while I was at work. It basically caught everything. And when I was at the hospital, the police came and spoke to me about what actually happened. They thought it was just some kind of break-in, but I had to explain the entire story and that Karen was the real person behind all of this. The video was great because the guys didn't even try to hide their faces and the police were able to find and arrest them. They went to some bar afterwards and the police picked them up on charges of breaking and entering and assault and battery. They were quick to roll over on Karen when told they could get a deal for a lighter sentence. They admitted that Karen had paid them to do everything. Now, I was filing a lawsuit against Karen, the HOA as a whole, and of course the thugs that attacked me. I will get the thugs over with first while I'm still talking about them. It was pretty basic that they were facing charges, but giving up Karen helped them out a lot. From their criminal histories, they were for sure going to prison for a while, but the criminal system had more interest in the person who actually hired the thugs to begin with. Karen, of course, was denying everything and getting a fancy and expensive lawyer in order to defend herself. The HOA, led by Karen, was being defended with that same lawyer, but there were two separate lawsuits since the HOA is its own entity even though Karen is in charge of it. She went with the method of trying to deny everything and claiming that I am crazy and making the entire thing up. She started claiming that I was a stalker who wouldn't leave her alone and she had only hired those thugs to protect her. Apparently, I was obsessed and wanted to be with her so badly that she feared what I was gonna do. Not enough to tell the police or have any kind of actual evidence of that fact, of course. Plus, the thugs giving a totally different story. Her minions did not really know what to do, and it was clear that they were going down with the sinking ship that was Karen. They were being asked if they sent me any letter, and they denied doing so, despite my evidence having HOA letters with their signatures on it. They were asked if they knew Karen had hired the thugs, despite the fact that the payment for the thugs came from one of the other board members' bank account. The entire thing was a crap show, and as you can guess, the court was siding with me on every single point. Karen and the HOA were both being charged with multiple counts of harassment, extortion, assault, and even more. All of them were going to end up spending time in jail at least, with Karen getting the biggest sentence out of everybody as being the clear ringleader of everything. Without them, the HOA was shut down, and they were ordered to give people money back that they had taken from them. Well, it turns out they were giving out fake fines and actually getting money for it. Money they had to pay back out of pocket because their HOA bank account was empty. Why, you might ask? Because Karen was dumb enough to pay her fancy lawyer with HOA money, which is just a whole different legal issue that she was going to have to deal with now. Without an HOA, the neighborhood pretty much stayed exactly the same. Them being there didn't really do anything aside from the problems that they caused. So with them gone, things were back to how they should have been the entire time, with people being friendly and just acting the way adults should without the need of threats or fines. And before we end the video, we will read one last story from r/traumatisedandback. It is titled, "So You Killed It?" So this happened to me when I took my car to the dealer for a minor repair. When I arrived to pick it up, I noticed that the driver's side door lock was no longer working and complained. The serviceman was extremely patronizing and said, "Honey, car parts have a natural lifespan and your door lock is dead. Not our fault. Do you understand, sweetheart?" He then said it would cost $150 to replace the lock. I looked at him in faint horror and replied, "So my door lock was alive when I brought my car here?" He nodded. "And now it's dead?" He nodded again. So I turned to the next woman in line and said in a louder voice, "Did you hear that? He killed my door lock and won't take responsibility." The other woman looked a bit aghast, and I repeated even louder, "This man murdered my door lock and is trying to get me to pay $150 for one that is alive." At this point, a lot of people in line were staring, and some seemed to be having second thoughts about leaving their cars. That is when a manager rushed out, ushered me into his office and said there was a misunderstanding. And of course, they would replace it at their own expense. And yeah guys, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to check out my playlist for endless content, and I will see you again tomorrow.